values in education since its inception in 2005. This event of celebrating the importance of the environment is yet another feather in its cap. Saveetha School of Engineering has crossed several milestones in academics and research. It is one of the premier institutions in India to receive the IET accreditation that certifies our students for direct employment in UK. Saveetha School of Engineering is approved by AICTE, and the institute is also accredited with a grade A by NAC. More than 3 decades ago, Saveetha Institute of Medical and Technical Sciences began its journey of educating and empowering thousands of young minds into skilled and employable workforce. Saveetha Institute of Medical and Technical Sciences is ranked 42nd out of 1,000 private universities, private and public universities by the Government of India for the past 3 consecutive years. Saveetha School of Engineering has 3 scientists who have come under top 2% researchers. This is among the top 10 institutions in Tamil Nadu. We are also proud to say that we are the only private organization in Chennai that have industrial CNC milling, and we are closely related to industries. We offer excellent in-house research facilities, including branch-wise Center for Excellence in various domains, company-sponsored laboratories, central library, and the department library resources. We also have a wide range of international e-journals, IEEE, ASTM, ASCE, Springer CSE, Springer Mechanical, JGate, Wiley Online, and Science Direct, etc., for encouraging research and publications. The Scopus database reveals that Saveetha School of Engineering published around 2,000 plus research publications exclusively with in-house affiliations. Comprehensively, 1,578 plus authors contributed to research publications with SSC, including collaborative research. We have also received around 1 crore for consultancy projects and around 9 crores towards sponsorship projects. The Department of Energy and Environmental Engineering, established in 2013, has well-qualified faculty members with intense interest in research and academics. The course curriculum equips students to pursue research both in India and abroad. The subjects empower students to gain gainful employment nationally and internationally. I feel greatly honored to invite the distinguished dignitaries, director, principal, program directors of various institutions, head of the departments, faculty members, students, and participants to this magnificent occasion. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Hariharan to introduce the speaker of the day, Mr. Amit Kulkarni. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Once again, good morning to another person here. This is our second session today. I welcome our chief guest. Mr. Amik Pulkarni has over 22 years of management, information technology, and engineering experience with a global exposure in areas such as management, oversight of client engagements, technical architecture, solutions in engineering services, strategic planning, and sales support of service and solution. He also has comprehensive experience in project and customer management and operational excellence for engagements in IT and engineering services, and has been incremental in leading multifunctional teams for large engineering projects. In his current role at L&T Technology Services, Mr. Amit heads the power and utilities business and leading the sustainability initiative. He is involved with innovative solution in gasification of engines, hybridization of distributed energy sources, electrification solutions, and digital solutions for enhancement of operational efficiency of renewable forms, all of which has led to environmental benefits by increasing output or minimizing the emissions. Environment is a passion for him, and at a personal level, he is also a natural farmer with a sole aim of returning back to the nature. Sir, thank you, sir. Welcome you, sir, once again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hariharan, and thanks for the kind words. Pretty impressed. I mean, the madam was giving the background and seeing the kind. I think 2 things that struck me, or 3 things I would say. One, the association with the industries. 2, the grants and the innovation that is happening. And lastly, the fact that you have the energy and environmental engineering as one of the branch is itself, a wonderful thing, because it is the future. I mean, energy and environment is the future, and people who are really involved in it are going to make the difference in the coming ages and for the future generations as well. So I think pretty noble and great to know that. And at the outset, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. It's a wonderful day today. We celebrate this as the World Environment Day, and there cannot be a bigger cause today than what we could commit ourselves to. So once again, thanks for having me. What I would do is I come from the engineering background, and our organization is associated with multiple companies across the globe, and we are one of the key sustainable partner for our companies. So from an engineering perspective, what is the world doing today? What are the companies doing today? What type of services that are coming? How do we see the future of engineering in line with sustainability or environment engineering is something that we would cover. What are the areas that are strongly being followed, and why is an aspect that I would try to cover. Just a disclaimer, I'm not able to see the screen of people. So if there is any question, any hand raised, I won't be able to see that. But Mr. Hariharan, if I can request you, if there is any interruption or if anything has to be, or anybody has a question in between, you can just please interrupt me at any point. Otherwise, we will anyway have.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir.
Thank you so much. So, just to quickly introduce my organization, who I represent, I belong to a company called L&T Technology Services. Now, we are a part of a Larsen and Toubro group. Larsen and Toubro, anyway, it's one of the headquarters for the ECC group is in Chennai, and I don't have to really introduce that as an organization. But we are an independent company. We are ourselves listed on the stock process here in India. And our business is purely to provide the engineering services to global customers. We do that for people who are in transportation, who are doing industrial and consumer products, media and entertainment, medical. So, we kind of cater to various companies that are involved in such kind of businesses. And we primarily help them do their product development, do certain engineering innovations. We partner while they're doing the electronic engineering, mechanical engineering, testing or validation. So it's a broad-based services that we provide to our customers. And while doing that, one of the area which is going to be a big impact in the future is the digital applications, and we are also involved in helping customers from that perspective. Overall, as an organization size, we are about 17,000 people. Just to start, and we'll to give you a feeling, we have a sustainability vision. We are looking at it in a big way. We have a vision that we are going to enable net zero products for our customer, and this we would enable it through net zero in operations, net zero in manufacturing, and digital intervention. So this is something as a goal that we have taken, and we are working with our customers. And why and what is something that I will just take you through. Now today, the business aspect is changing. I mean, yes, till date businesses have been only one parameter on which they were measured. That was the profit. I mean, what is the amount of money a company has been making. To a large extent, even today, yes, we do measure it primarily in terms of the money. But then they have realized, and companies have realized that that's not going to stay. And it has happened in both ways. I mean, there is a affirmative action that companies themselves have taken, and then there are laws and regulations that are coming from the external agencies, which is also enabling these people or forcing these people to move towards green and environmental environmental friendly policies, so to say. So as much money as you can generate, for whom you are generating that, if the base is not sustained, then there is no point in generating the money. So today the gold is in green. So it's very clear, and what we will measure in the future for the companies is in terms of climate currency than the actual currency. Maybe just one thought I have, because when I've been looking at, I mean, we use the phrase save nature, save environment, environment friendly. I strongly believe that environment and nature doesn't need any saving for themselves. I mean, a simple example: if there is you build a city, and if the city goes in ruins for whatever reason, we just the people move out from there, you will realize that within few years there will be trees that have come out through all the building windows, and everywhere you'll see that it is regenerating itself, and the forest and the environment will come back. What we are actually working towards is saving humans and saving mankind. We are at risk, not nature, not environment. So I think that makes it more critical that we invest in this. So for industries globally, the turning point or the inflection point, where does this really change as a part of sustainability? When did companies really start getting talking about this, working towards sustainability? Started maybe December 2015 to November 2016 kind of time frame, when there was this climate agreement, the Paris Pact, that was signed. All companies are aligned with that goal of reducing the global temperature by 1.5%, minimizing the global warming. Now, based on that, UN has defined the goals. I'm sure people who are in the the environmental and energy business or the branch would know these goals and will be associated with this. But primarily, if you see on the sustainability for the companies, it is in the three areas. There is social, economical, and environmental. Social is where you are helping people achieve gender equality. There could be no discrimination, and all those areas is what could come as a part of social. Even education, for that matter, and all is part of the sustainability, and the companies are investing in that. Economical is where you try to reduce poverty and do the CSR aspect and all of that, which comes as a part of economical. What we will focus today, or what companies, if you look at engineering, where it will kind of impact, is primarily on the environmental. So if you see the goals which are darkened off here are kind of aligned with the social and economical, where engineering may not be necessarily playing a bigger part. But if you talk about good health, if you talk about water and sanitation, you talk about energy, you talk about infrastructure, sustainable communities and cities, this is where the engineering element is going to play. I mean, we as engineers can contribute in these areas. And while doing so, I mean, it becomes imperative that we look at the purpose of a business, we enable growth of the business, but there is a balance where you ensure that the growth is eco-friendly, environment friendly, and there are measures taken that kind of ensure that whatever is the carbon emission or whatever is the pollution outlet that companies are letting in, equally it is being made up, so that net there is a balance in the whole environment, and we are not destroying whatever has been created here. So with that focus, maybe you are aware, but maybe I'll just cover it in maybe a few minutes, is how are companies working, what exactly are they doing, how are they defining themselves. So if you see, the regulatory authorities have come out with certain standards. They could be a GRI standard, there could be a CDP standard, ISO has come up with the standards for energy management. So the frameworks are defined. A company or an institute, whoever is getting associated, aligned or defining the goals for sustainability, they would kind of register themselves, they would do an audit for themselves and figure out what is their net carbon output today, how much of energy are they consuming, how much of travels they are making the people within their organization travel, and how much of transportation is coming, how much of logistics is used, all that is kind of measured, and they define, okay, this is my current carbon contribution that I am doing, and I set a goal that by 2030 I will reduce this by 50%, or by 2035 I will bring my power purely on renewable. So company would define that goals, and those goals are measured as a science-based targets, which is called the SBTIs. And if you see globally, I mean, go to any company today, almost all the major companies publish their sustainability reports, and they are publicly accessible. What I have put here with those logos is something which is a publicly available data, so there is nothing confidential in this. But all companies are talking about the carbon reduction, and the focus that they bring is either through the electrical energy consumption, reducing the thermal energy consumption, increasing the renewable, reduce water, and reduce hazardous waste. So most of them, the goals kind of get limited to these areas. I mean, if you do the analysis of all the goals, this is where you would see everybody landing. And from there, if we as engineers, we kind of take these areas, and we want to support these companies achieve this goal in sustainability, we could look at two areas, two divisions, I would say. One, every company would have its operations and maintenance. They will have their buildings, they will have their factories, they will have their operations. So there is a huge possibility of bringing engineering solutions to enable achieving the sustainability, to enable them to save the environment. The other area that comes is in terms of the product design, because a company, for example, Apple is giving out a phone, or a Samsung is giving out a phone, or you buy an air conditioner from some company. Now these products, how do we make them more efficient, more eco-friendly? That is another area that is seen, and I will take you maybe into details of what each of these area means. But more or less, this is where the engineering will play a major part. There could be other areas which I may not have captured here. There could be some areas, but this is where a major part would be played. And to kind of cover all of it, one of the biggest area, and where I would really encourage the young engineers who are coming out, because the engineers of today who are coming out are so digitally oriented and already kind of educated digitally, aware of the digital intervention, that they can play a major role in terms of enabling the proliferation of digitization into lots and lots of operations and products, and thereby making them more efficient and more reliable and more energy friendly, which again goes into the goal of the sustainability. So this what we saw now, one, there is a Paris Pact which is driving the sustainability vision for the companies. There are goals that are defined primarily on environmental, social, and economical basis. We are focusing primarily on environmental today. The companies have defined their SBTIs, or their science-based targets, by doing their own measurement, and they have proactively come out to say how much they want to save and what they want to save. And based on that, they publicly, just like what we get as an annual report for the business performance of, every quarter and every annual, they release how much, what was been the business top line, bottom line. Similarly, they generate an annual report, they publish it, and it is accessible, and people can go and see it, and people can go and ask questions. There, very recently, and when I say recently, I'm talking about last week, Shell as a company, because it's in a business where oil and gas and all the processing that they do, they do have a lot of polluting elements, so-called polluting industry, and they were reorganizing their board, and there were two members who were to be kind of nominated and onboarded. The lobby which is invested in Shell, which is focused on this environment energies, they blocked that those that alignment, or blocked those board of directors to be nominated, and they ensured that there were a couple of environment friendly people from their lobby who come in and take those positions, only because they were particular that these two people who are coming are not aligned with the sustainable goals. So it is also becoming pretty strong from outside. So you see companies are very much interested, and this is where they will need help, they will need support to see how they can achieve their goals. And these goals can only be achieved through the engineering applications, and these applications will fall under energy, water, the smart facilities, climate action, and designing more eco-friendly products. And how they do that is what we will cover in the next section, which will go more into the engineering side of it. I hope you are with me up till now. So what does energy mean? I mean, what are the use cases? How does energy play a part? If you see, almost 50-60% of the companies, or I would say 80-90% of the companies, but almost 50% of the goal is kind of moving towards renewable. There is no option. Every company, wherever they find a space, be it their rooftop, be it some parking lot, wherever they find a space, they go in and set up a renewable farm, which primarily in our side of the world will be solar. There is a lot of wind turbine that is coming in. New technologies like hydrogen are coming in, still early, but yes, at least solar and wind are kind of established. So transitioning the power to renewable is a big area. While doing so, hybridization is another big area. So for example, I said, or there is a company that had set up a solar farm for themselves. Now they were able to use the solar on a regular basis for their factory. But over a weekend, on a holiday, all the power that is generated is wasted, because you cannot, you have to store the power if you don't, if you have to consume it later. And that was not there. Now we hybridize it. And what was hybridization done? A storage was brought in, which was to the tune of 1 megawatt or 2 megawatt, attached into this, solar farm that has been set up. And then you set up a grid controller that will enable a decision that if my power is getting generated on a weekend and it is not being consumed, there is extra power, I move it into the batteries. I will keep my batteries charged. On the day of working, whenever there is a peak that comes, there is an extra load, especially when you are starting the machinery in the morning and all, when you have extra load, and then the generated power is falling short, you pull the power from the battery and ensure that the renewable power is still used, because even if you are using it from the battery, the power is still from the renewable. So these kind of hybridization solutions are coming. Lot of electrification solutions, like what we have at our home also. I mean, a local solar farm, it also becomes a part of a electrification solution. Going into the future, EV and EV charging infrastructure, because today we talk about Tesla and their electric vehicles. With the Tatas are coming, Toyotas are coming. Everybody is talking about the electric vehicles. But today we have a problem that we use petrol. Petrol is a fossil fuel which is not so environment friendly. Tomorrow, if you bring in, say, electric cars and you start charging them on the power that is generated from fossil fuel, you're using coal or you're using petrol only, and then you're generating this power, and you're using this power to charge your car, and then you say, I've got an eco-friendly car which is running on batteries. Is it really eco-friendly? Maybe relatively yes, no, but then it is not completely eco-friendly. But how do we kind of set up renewable based EV charging infrastructure? And that is going to be a big area. And it does have the elements of what kind of renewable sources could be used, what kind of charging mechanism can be done. So the whole, what kind of the grid controllers would be required. So this whole element of electrical grid connectivity, power electronics, storage, the understanding of the performance of the EV kind of equipment, the performance of a wind or a solar farm, all this engineering has to be kind of considered. And this is a big area, because you go to any customer today or any company today, that company is moving into renewables, and we should be aligned to the kind of engineering that will enable this kind of area to them. Similarly, there is a environmental solutions. Now this is where you look at the impacting area. So here it could be, for example, you have vehicles, or especially, let's take the vessels, marine vessels that is, running on the fossil fuel. They are the huge engines, and for those engines, they are just emitting their emissions out into the environment. So, the sulfur and nitrogen based oxides are kind of completely polluting the environment. Now, there are laws and rules that have come, and there are technology that has come. There are products like ballast water systems or scrubbers, which kind of treat the emission so that emission is not immediately released into the environment. When it's coming out of the engine, you will have a scrubber that will be sitting just outside the engine. It will kind of capture, or it will push all of that, the emissions that are coming as a sludge into a tank. Now that sludge is taken, and you kind of process it to kind of remove the harmful elements, do the chemical processing, so that the direct SOx and NOx you kind of convert probably into an H2SO4 kind of acid, or use the seawater to kind of process it, and with a safe processing you then release it into the water or air, as the case could be. Now these kind of equipments are coming. This is what we talked about in marine. The similar kind of thing would happen in a power plant, because there also, or any plant for that matter, how do you treat the emissions that are coming in? One of the big area today is in terms of how do you reuse. Now if a machinery is working, there is a emission that is coming in, there is a heat or element, because if you're looking at an engine or any thermal plant, there is so much of a heat that is coming in. How do I reuse the heat? How do I use the emission that is coming, what we call as heat recovery systems? Now those systems, how do we make it more efficient, so that every instance of any saving of emissions or reuse of power and energy is going to actually act in a positive form for the environment. So these kind of solutions are catching in. Hydrogen is going to be a big area in coming days. Various electrolyzers, various fuel cells, the technology to kind of generate hydrogen, generate it in a clean way, is going to be a big area, especially the storage and movement of hydrogen as well, because there is a safety concern that comes in. So how will you store it? How will you move it from a location A to location B? And how do you generate hydrogen, which is equivalent to huge power sources that are there? So, people who are interested can do a lot of reading. We can connect on this as a separate topic some other time as well. Waste, water and waste management, is a big area. Water, I mean, it is said that the future world wars could be fought on water, and enough cannot be said about it. So minimizing the discharge of liquid, how do I reuse, how do I treat water? Because if I start treating water only chemically, again I'm polluting the environment, because then I have to handle the chemicals that have been kind of processing the water for softening it and kind of things. So all the technologies that come from that perspective is another big area that we have to look at. It could be in terms of the new technologies that come for treating the water, softening the water, recycling the water, or also managing the performance of the water treatment plants, wherein you can bring in the right sensors, right technologies, right monitoring and control systems that come in to kind of ensure that these plants become more efficient and do more cleaning and more softening of the water, and thereby doing more recycling. Smart manufacturing is another area. Anything, if you go on a shop floor, anything that gets automated, it could be your material handling, it could be your overall output, because if anything is coming as a production, the faster you do it, the more with less energy that you do it, the better it is for environment. So all the new technologies that could be there, it could be computer vision, it could be robotic simulation, it could be RPA, it could be the automation for material handling system. Now these are big areas that impact in a big way for the carbon footprint of an organization. Lot of focus is going in these areas to kind of save. For example, again here, if when I'm doing an assembly, there could be a computer vision solution in front of me that will tell the worker how rightly to do the activity, so that there are no defects or no problems that are coming in. Or you could do a software control. There is a whole connection of now from design to shop floor. You kind of do a process automation of all the quality checks, all the control systems into one go. So there could be a system that is online checking the quality of the output that is coming. For example, this is chemical industry, the chemical is coming out, so there is a system that is online checking the output that is coming, checking the quality, and based on that it is automatically controlling the control system to let it know if there is any variation to be done, so that you are minimizing the defective product and you are automatically ensuring that minimum energy and optimum sources are used. So that kind of RPA, which is the process automation, robotic process automation, is again a big area where we are leveraging the digital elements and enabling a smart manufacturing. I'll probably just take another 5 minutes just to cover a couple of other areas. So digital intervention is a big area. You look at buildings. I heard our previous speaker speak. You have to make them as a green building. Now there is all technology that is available. You will have your sensors, you will have your control elements. Now where all can you fit it? Be it in your elevators, be it in your AC, be it in your lighting. Now if there is a whole huge premise and there is a centralized AC. Now can I control the AC in a localized form? Because I could be a single person sitting on a whole floor. Now, do I really need to use the complete AC on the floor, or can I control it in a way that it becomes comfortable for a single person that is sitting and not necessarily consume all the energy, which in other cases it may do so. So it could be a smart campus where, where I am sitting here and I'm able to manage my lobby, my visitors, my parking. Now, if anything that you bring as this saving is you're reducing the carbon footprint there. It could be on the building, it could be in your plants. So something like, for example, you look at a water, air, gas, electricity, steam, which are prime sources that are used on a plant. Go to each source. What is consumption? What is output? How can it be enhanced? Is there any leakage? Can I put a sensor? Can I monitor it? Can I track it? Can I build a computer platform or a software platform that will show a visualization that how much water is getting consumed, and post my implementation of some technical or digital solutions, how much of it is getting reduced? So such kind of areas are already being implemented. And health and performance monitoring for equipment, putting sensors, capturing the data, and in real time. So you for example have hundreds of systems that are there across the globe. You sit at one location and you are checking all the 100 systems using your laptop to see how the performance is going. Is there anywhere where the operation is going wrong? And it could lead to a downtime or a fault that is coming, because a downtime or a fault is not environment friendly again. So how do you kind of optimize its operations? Through the sensors, through collecting all the data, using the data or positioning the data, storing it at the right location, and then using your data analytics platforms and all to ensure that you are analyzing the data rightly to track and monitor its performance. Similarly, safety using all the advanced technologies of sensors, RFIDs, to kind of ensure that there is a safety, especially in any hazardous areas, which could be on a wind turbine or which could be in a power plant. You ensure that people are using right tools, right protective gears, and all of that to ensure that there is a worker safety, because that is one of, again, a critical element from sustainability. And then this list can go on. I mean, this is just a indicative list. Paperless factory. I mean, what better can be done than getting a paperless factory, which is I mean, obviously an environment friendly thing. Lastly, there is a new concept that has come in with respect to the product design, and you may have heard it. For those who may have not, everybody will now talk about this product circular economy. This is the whole product development concept will be based on the circular economy. And what does circular economy mean? Circular, today it is make to waste. I make something, and then it gets disposed and it is waste. But while I'm designing the product today, right at the designing level, I should think about the future. What is going to happen at the end of life? And then at that point, how do I enable the maximum reuse? So what type of material am I using? Where can this material be reused at the end of life? What type of systems are there? Where can it come? And then if there could be some material that is still to be made waste, how can it be done in an eco-friendly way? Now, right at the conceptualization of a product, you start looking into these aspects, and every element, I mean, be it its manufacturing, be it the material, be it its logistic or transportation, be it the supply chain where you're procuring the material for such kind of products, be it the packaging material, everything you will have to look at it as how eco-friendly elements can be brought in. Even for that matter, sourcing. For example, today I may be getting a material from importing it from somewhere. Now the material could be available at an imported level. It could be available even cheap if I get it from China. But then just look at the amount of energy that would be spent to just bring it here, because you would probably be using ships, you'll probably be using aircrafts, and once it comes into the ports here, you're going to put it in a trucks or something, and then you're going to probably bring it to your factory for doing the assembly and processing to bring out your product. But as much as possible, if you can locally procure the material, this whole carbon emission for just procuring the material can be minimized. So if the nearer that I go for my sourcing or my supply chain, it is going to be better. And that is, in a way, if you look at it from a business perspective, for a country like India, it could be a risk, because I may be losing my market to export it. But it is from an environment friendly, it's also an opportunities that I go locally there as well, and set up my operations to facilitate the people there. So everything now is going to be based on the circular economy for product design, be it your packaging, be it my like today a wind turbine, for example, uses huge composite blades. How can those blades be reusable? How can I reuse that composite as a material? That element as a thought is becoming very, very prominent. And along with that, making your product efficient is anyway there. Use sensors, use digitization to ensure that your product is more smart, more you can track its performance. But something that you can see as an interesting trend, because you are young engineers, and when you are coming out, you would realize that more and more products are becoming a service. Now, if I want to buy a phone, you may not necessarily buy it as a phone in coming days. It's already there in US, but you buy it as a service, that you buy it on a contract for a couple of years, or 1 year, with ensuring that you're going to buy it from a particular service provider. And then after that, you return back that phone, and then you get into either a new contract or a new company or whatever you want to do. Same thing would happen to an engine. So if I'm manufacturing aircrafts and I'm going to buy an engine from a Rolls-Royce or a Dassault, then I'm not necessarily going to buy it as engine. I'm going to buy it as a service. I don't pay for the engine. As much as I use the engine, I will pay for that particular product. Tires, for example, you buy tires today, and I know once I pay for the tire, I'm using it for its life, and then I'm just disposing it off when I go for the new tires. But it's not long when you'll actually not, you'll just go and feed the tires based on the number of kilometers you run. You'll your card or your bank could be charge a certain, just like you use it for the phone, you would end up paying for the tire. There will be sensors, there will be all smartness on the tires that they will track. How are you performing? How are you driving? Are you driving rash? Are you driving it on a rough roads? Are you driving it on a good roads? Based on which your amount could be finalized, and automatically a message could be coming that now the tire is at end of life, and I'm going to you need to go and replace it. So you never buy a tire, but you buy it as a service. Why only tire? It could even be a car. So the models are changing, and as much as people who are manufacturing gets a control on the product and its usage, the usage can become more efficient, and it could you will be able to control the end of life behavior. How it gets disposed can be checked, because if I, for example, buy an online tire and I'm not able to return it back, I may just throw the tire in a dustbin, and I'm polluting my environment. But when it's a service, you're giving it back, and they're going to reuse that material to regenerate the new tires. You are actually helping the environment grow. So these are all the elements. So to conclude, companies are aligned. They are looking at building their reducing their environmental impact. We need to help them rise to the challenge and maintain competitiveness, and that's where we engineers come in, and we have a huge role to play in coming days. Being innovative, being kind of thoughtful, being mindful of this this particular concept, and kind of contribute both to the organizations as well as to the environment. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I hope I made sense, but maybe would like to hear from people, any questions, any thoughts on this.
Thank you very much, sir. You have filled a young, energetic brain with innovative ideas. Now, I would request the participants, if you have any queries, just raise your hands so that we can unmute you. Participants, any queries, just raise your hands.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Sir, actually, what are the challenges are available to bring PHV in India, sir, fully?
Sorry?
What are the challenges are available to bring PHV, electric vehicle, in India? The system.
The challenges are obvious, right? I mean, see, we as a country, see, it is multifold, and it will come from a social, cultural, and infrastructural elements, all the three. In fact, we are one of the best countries where our EV element can be most economical, because we fortunately lie on the zone where a solar farm is so easy to set up, and the amount of sunlight. First and foremost, the EV technology itself is still not very mature, because I don't think it is a challenge to bring it in India. It won't be, because even today you have. It is going to be just an evolution that is going to come, because today the technology is still young. It is costly. I mean, the proliferation has to happen. It has to become more, because if I have to buy a petrol car vis-a-vis a battery car, with whatever subsidies or whatever it comes, even government is not really giving subsidies to the electric vehicles right now, because they, for whatever reasons it could be. But the electric vehicles become costly. With the battery and the cost of battery, it becomes not so very economical in terms of operations and maintenance. I am today, for example, if I have to drive from my place where I'm based in Baroda to Mumbai, which is a 400 kilometers, I will be worried that if I'm driving on this car and if it runs out of battery, runs out of power in between, what am I really going to do? How am I really going to recharge my vehicle? So that becomes there is a uncertainty, and there is no reliability that I can take it from point A to point B without having a problem.
Yes.
Now people are working on it. For example, I know for sure Indian Oil Corporation today, they at every petrol pump that is there, they are trying to set up a charging stations, so which is renewably driven. So they are using solar to generate hydrogen, using fuel cells to kind of charge the vehicles. So eco-friendly charging station is already being rolled out. It's in prototype stage right now, but it will take some time. So I don't think there are challenges. It's just that whether the technology is ready, the infrastructure is ready, and the people, which is the socio-cultural thing, it is ready. So absolutely no challenge. I don't think we are even behind globally. I mean, as India, it is not that in US or Europe you find like just like too many cars are out in the market which are running on the electric. It's not so yet, and we are also there. We will never stay behind the technology anymore. All the technology is available. It's just a matter of getting the infrastructure in place, getting the realization in place for the people, and we will see that, and getting the economics of it right, and we'll see that the EV is going to be a factor in India as well. I don't think
we will challenge. We will see, sir, in future we'll make every vehicles and PHEV vehicles. We will make our global as so environment friendly, sir.
Absolutely, and just having EV is not going to make it environment friendly, as I said earlier also. Having EV driven purely through renewable is going to be the key factor. So I think that is where the whole technology would look at.
Already Zeno, I think we have one participant have one query. Sir, Zeno? Yes, can you audible? Yeah. Tell me your question.
Yes, sir. My question is about, so we have a Paris protocol for 2050, right? So by 2050, does India have a specific roadmap to reach that 2050, or is there a way to bring it quicker? So instead of 2050, waiting for 2050, can we bring it to 2030 itself? And if so, what plans do you have in mind? Or does L&T or any Indian corporation have something related to that? So that's
absolutely. I think, sure. I absolutely. I think from an India perspective, India was one of the biggest promoter for that goal, and the biggest commitment has been done. And whatever could be done as a country from India in terms of its policies, laws, regulations, environment protection areas, I think the country is doing that, and there is that contribution is already being seen. So as a country, it has been done. But then what is more from our perspective today, the relevance comes from the companies. What are the companies doing? And this is where what I just talked about, from the companies defining their goals. So if you take L&T and you go on Google and do a search on a L&T sustainable report, you will get this report available publicly, and they are highlighting what is it their goal, because every company will have a different goal. So again, what happens here is there is like, for example, on a profit or money, there will be a particular 50%, or I want a profit of $1 million, $5 million kind of thing that comes, right? I mean, it gets defined with an exact measure. For sustainability, it is always a relative measure. So for example, you are probably contributing, say for example today 50% of your for the carbon emission. I am doing it at 25%. I'm a much leaner. But when I measure, we both may define the same goal, that I will bring down my carbon footprint by 50%. So when you bring it by 50% from your current 50%, you are still doing it at 25%, and I bringing it from 25% will come down to 12.5% if I achieve.
Okay.
But it is for the companies to define their own goals. So there is no gun on the head that you have to do only so much, or you have to bring only so much.
Okay.
But I am bringing so much of contribution, I will bring it down by so and so percentage by moving to renewable, by being more eco-friendly materials, by saving water conservation, by doing CSR. See, there is one other way you buy a carbon credit here. For example,
Yes.
I am a company with a lot of money. There are agencies or NGOs that plant trees. When you plant trees, there is carbon credit that you get. So for example, I have a company, I'm planting trees, and I take a lot of land and I go and plant trees. For every tree that is planted and survive, I get carbon credit. I'm storing it as a bank here. You are a company like Apple or Amazon, you walk to me and say, I want to buy carbon credit. I want to tell people that I have being able to save environment. I did my bit. Here is $1 million. You give me your carbon credits. So I buy it from you. So these elements are also being done. So every company has their own goal. So when I talked about it from a renewable, reduction of carbon footprint, or transition to renewable, or reducing the consumption of power, each one have defined it in their own way, and everybody is working towards that. And that is where the scope for engineering is increasing drastically. And that is where we come and enable the carbon footprint saving from an engineering perspective.
So as a nation, they don't have a specific goal, right? Like within 50 years, or whether should we fast forward to 30 years? They don't have, but it's based on the individual companies.
No, what happens as a companies will kind of go into what has been done as a country.
As a country, okay. So it's like destructured from this restructuring way. Okay.
Absolutely, because the India commitment is there.
All right.
As much as preparing is not so much on the thought for anybody today, but everybody is defining their goals, and now there is this, and this comes from what we talked about as science-based measures. If you remember,
Yes.
we talked on that slide. So that measure is coming. So every country also has measured. India and China, for example, doing already so much of pollution. I will bring it down by XYZ%. That is the commitment from the country. And what we do, what you do at home as a maybe moving towards renewable or anything like that, everything kind of ends up contributing to the nation's performance as well. Because even for a nation, there are measures based on which your SBTI is already defined. Everybody knows what was India's goal, and what was China's contribution. How much are we bringing it down by? And how much will we impact the global temperature? Because at the end of the day, the measure is simple. I have to bring down the global temperature by 1.5 degrees. So, is as a country, all elements working towards that, that's a kind of a measure. But there is no guideline, rule, law book of process that is there and that has to be followed kind of thing. This is not an area where this is more of an affirmative action that everybody has to take.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a pleasure having you with us today, sir. I, on behalf of Saveetha School of Engineering, Department of Energy and Environmental Engineering, would like to thank the speaker, Mr. Amit Kulkarni, for spending his valuable time with us today. At this juncture, let us all work together to give our coming generations a healthier and happier environment to have a beautiful life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was my pleasure more than yours. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Dear participant, can please note down the feedback link. Give your valuable feedback. சரி சார், என்னாச்சு?
இல்ல நான் மியூட் பண்ணி பேசணும்.
Dear participant, we're going to start the third session. So welcome, sir. Kannan Counter, sir. Kannan, sir. Can you?
Hello.